with you. Flip the doujin in the bed, I'm reading manga till it's two. Tell me that you love us if I go, I'm knowing that it's true. Cause you acting all moe and vanilla in my view. So this is for them waifus, straight 2D flex in my life, fool. If you fuck with him, tell you my dude. Let the beat right out, keep it nice and smooth, yo.
Okay, real quick, just before we even start, I'm curious. Outside of Mercy, who's your favorite Overwatch lady?
Like, in terms of playability, in terms of attractiveness?
You know what I mean.
Tracer.
Okay, I'll respect it.
What about you? Well, do you even like Mercy as much as I do?
No, I don't like Mercy as much as you do.
Okay, who's your top Overwatch lady?
I guess like if I have to pick, it'll be Diva. Well, she
Surprise,
kind of resembles.
All right, let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome to the Weeabooze, the anime podcast where we get drunk and talk about anime. I'm Kyle.
I'm Hunter.
And what?
That's already a drink.
That is a drink.
That was a quick one, dude.
What are we drinking tonight?
Okay, we are drinking Hop Valley Brewing Company out of Oregon. It's called Citrus Mistress, which is pretty much the only reason we bought it.
It tastes like a watered down version of what we drank last week.
Yeah, pretty much.
Cool. Dope. Let's get started. So, lately I've become increasingly fascinated by the life cycle of anime genres and trends. I find myself asking what makes an archetype popular. At what point does a series become nothing more than its genre? Or how does a genre grow to fit the needs of a modern audience? The YouTuber Nerdwriter recently released a video titled Superhero Movies Get Old. The video focused on the movie Logan and how it seems to be this transformative, almost symbolic piece of work that represents a potential shift in the superhero genre. The video goes on to say, when a genre exhausts itself, society eventually demands for it to become something new. The author, John Coelty, wrote an essay on this concept of what he calls generic transformation, regarding how an outdated genre will evolve, taking on one of four forms: burlesque, nostalgia, demythologization, or reaffirmation of myth. So, giving full credit to Nerdwriter as the inspiration behind this discussion, I'd like to apply the format of his analysis to a more anime-centric perspective. Shonen is arguably the anime equivalent of the Hollywood superhero movie. From a superficial outlook, they're both action-oriented and highlight very visceral content such as action and visuals, but more importantly, they're both incredibly played out. Regardless of the redundancy, we continue to watch shonen anime because we don't want to lose hope in a genre that taught us the meaning of hope. It's a genre that has filled us with passion and attempts to continue to instill that passion for its intended younger audience. However, Shonen Jump itself, the publisher behind the once big three, Bleach, Naruto, and One Piece, is fully aware of its own decline. They recently published 6 new series in Q1 of 2017, which is double the amount they released in the same quarter as 2015, triple the amount of last year. Check out Super Eyepatch Wolf's video on Shonen for more of these statistics. Shonen Jump's drastic implementation of these new series is evidence of the fact that existing shonen conventions are outdated. Let's visit Coelty's 4 forms of generic transformation, provide an example of each one, and then see if we can come to any meaningful conclusions about the future of shonen. Cool?
Sounds like a plan, dude.
So first, we have burlesque. In this context, burlesque is referred to as a parody of conventions where tropes are made to appear ridiculous. I don't think it's possible to give a better example than One Punch Man. One Punch Man may be the greatest shonen parody because it ultimately becomes something entirely new. Yes, it began by mocking the outrageously overpowered shonen protagonists, but a narrative was miraculously constructed through a concept that theoretically shouldn't have worked. How can a conflict be established when every enemy can be defeated with a single punch? Shonen series can function through the existence of power levels, and One Punch Man just threw balancing strengths and weaknesses out of the equation. In actuality, Genos, or even Moomin Rider, should be the main character, while Saitama shouldn't even exist in this universe. Burlesque is pretty straightforward. The humor originates from seeing these shonen pillars, chivalry, villains, friendship, rivals, being made completely irrelevant, yet maintaining the appeal of shonen.
It's really more of a comedy than a shonen, I would argue. Like, it's basically like whatever would happen if you were playing D&D and that kid that nobody likes was like, I want 20 on power and I don't care about charisma or attractiveness or any other things. It's
Exactly.
like, that's ridiculous. Of course you don't. No, I want it.
It's definitely a comedy using shonen as like a catalyst to tell a story. But that's what parody is, essentially.
But the thing is, like, in a shonen, I'm always waiting for some sort of like mega power up where he's like about to lose. Well, you kind of get that.
You
with
do,
this.
you totally do.
But like, you never worry in any of his fights.
No, you don't. I mean, that's correct.
And that's one of the things that makes a shonen is that, like, you know, in the most recent episode of Hero Academia, he walks up with Todoroki and I'm like, I don't know who's gonna win. And then
Sure.
One Punch Man, you're like, okay, he's gonna win. How's he gonna win?
Well, I mean, that's exciting in and of itself. But do you think that there are, like, can you think of a different example of parody in shonen, or do you think that's sort of the best? Or, like, what do you think about parody in relation to shonen?
I mean, I think that all shonen have comedy elements, but this was a kind of a flip where it was a comedy with shonen elements.
Right. Yeah, maybe, possibly. I mean, I can see.
That's just kind of how I look at it.
Okay. Well, the next form is nostalgia. So, in this sense, nostalgia is utilized to update classic conventions with modern elements. Not just evoke emotion through cheap means, but depict stories in a way that merges the defining characteristics of that genre and modern interests. So, Boku no Hero Academia is the epitome of this practice and has shown such great success. It's the clearest sign we have to the future of shonen. Back when I talked about Boku no Hero in my top 10 anime of 2016, I believe I described it having the potential to be a modern classic. But now more than ever, I'm realizing I meant that in an extremely literal way. Bleach, One Piece, and Naruto present themes of how friendship and teamwork will always prevail. And while those themes are meaningful, there's no reason for that message to be the heart of nearly every shonen anime in existence. Boku no Hero demonstrates its contemporary nature through its ideals. You have a classroom full of friends that respect one another, but as we're seeing in this tournament arc, the minute anyone is in a situation where they can showcase their potential for being a hero, you go all out against your opponent, regardless of who they are, because in a world full of heroes, you need to be the best to stand out. Although that may sound a bit narcissistic for a shonen anime theme, we're able to see it in a positive light when we understand that it's the mentality and motivation behind each character that defines them as heroic or villainous. Like Uraraka's simple goal of wanting money for her family, or Deku's goal of wanting to be a symbol of peace like All Might. Boku no Hero has a focus on the individual, reflecting a modern-day mentality far more than the happy-go-lucky outlook seen in more classic shonen.
I don't think that... Okay, so 3 things. 1, we're definitely taking a drink from this cat girl. 2 is that I don't think Boku no Hero is the only one that, like, really focuses on characterization and gives every character a goal. But just backtracking a little bit, another parody show, because you asked what other parodies for shonen, I think that Kill la Kill would be an example of something that's kind of
Interesting.
making fun of it, but also has shonen elements. It's like... I think that that's almost a parody of the shonen genre. But it's also a really well done shonen in and of itself.
I never considered Kill la Kill to be a shonen.
I
feel
absolutely do. I mean, it's got all the things, right? So she
It does.
She gets a random power. She has random power ups, and then as she sees the main baddie at the very beginning and fights and loses, and then has to like work her way back up. It's totally a shonen.
Okay, if you say so. I mean, I'm not gonna fight you on this. I feel like Kill la Kill's something else, but I can see your argument.
Okay, but then I think that like even old shonen like One Piece or Dragon Ball Z also give a very good reason as to why each of the characters is fighting.
Sure.
So I don't think that that's necessarily new. I don't think that it's modern in the sense that it's breaking new ground. I just think that Hero Academia is extremely well done. It attaches to enough of the nostalgia elements that you're used to with the shonen, but injects enough new kind of like thoughts and new ways of approaching things,
right,
that it makes it so it feels like comfy, like you know what you're getting into, but it also has a couple surprises to throw at you.
That's essentially what I'm getting at, is that the modern element is very subtle and it's in the mentality of the characters. It's not really the attachment to the characters, but it's how they interact with one another.
Yeah, it's a little bit different. Like most shonen, you have a group of teammates getting together to defeat some sort of evil.
Right.
Whereas this one, everyone's trying to become the like best hero. So it is a little bit different. But that's what I mean when I say that it feels, like what's coming, and it's comfy, and it's nostalgic, but it has enough newness in it to make it feel modern.
Right. Totally. So next is demythologization. The act of demythologization is to subject popular myths to a reality that exposes them as unrealistic, dark, or immoral, depending on how you define shonen.
So is this the gritty reboot?
Sort of. So we'll get into it. Demythologization may not apply to this genre, which is interesting in and of itself. The definition of shonen is simply an action-oriented genre aimed at a young male audience, and having a young audience means it's unlikely to have a demoralizing resolution. So if we're going to make this categorization work, we may need to work our way into seinen territory. So seinen anime are meant for an audience old enough to read kanji. So personally, I think it's dumb to define a genre by the age of its audience. But for the sake of this discussion, I came up with two debatably acceptable references. One shonen, one seinen. This one's a bit of a stretch, but for shonen, the closest thing we have is Attack on Titan. I highly doubt Attack on Titan will result in being a true representation of that's going to be a hard drunk word.
Demythologization?
Yeah, definitely. So I don't think it's going to be a true demythologization. But it's among the most thematically dark shonen we have. In fact, the author originally stated he planned to kill off the trio at the end, but after the anime's huge success, both the publishers and the author himself agreed the characters have become too beloved to kill. We were close. We were really close. We almost had a true shonen demythologization.
Well, that's one thing I really love. Sorry to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
That's something I really love about, Shingeki, is that you'll get introduced to characters and you'll get characterization, you'll get backstory, and then they don't get some sort of slow motion, big, fireworks display of a death. They get like punched into a tree and then like slide down it, just like anyone else.
Yeah.
Like I really, really enjoy in the show that it doesn't try to make each death, so death is happening all over the place and it's really like quick and fast, just like it would be in real life, but they don't try to slow it down. They don't try to make a big deal out of it. It just happens. And I think that that's exactly what you're talking about with, demythologization, is that it's like, they're, even though this is the hero of the show, or this is a really, powerful character in the show, they can die in a split second just like anybody else. Nobody is safe. And that's what I like going into the show, is that every time all of the characters go into a battle, besides maybe Eren and Mikasa, every single person could die in this fight.
Right.
And I would not be surprised.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, yeah, totally. And that's kind of the aspect that makes it sort of a child-friendly demythologization, as far as shonen go. But
Fun fact, apparently Sasha was going to be killed, but the editor liked her and cried when the author told him.
Oh my gosh.
There's
See,
a drink.
that's terrible. Oh, fine.
You mean emotions taking over instead of the author
Yes.
just writing what he wanted?
Yes. So I hate that. I hate that so much. But
I like happy endings. Fuck you.
no, I feel like the author is being very restricted on what he can write. But so, if we want to explore a much more accurate example of demythologization, let's talk about a seinen I mistook for a shonen back in the day, the 1997 Berserk. So looking at Berserk from a superficial perspective, judging it by its cover, my 14-year-old self thought it would be like Bleach, the bigger the sword, the more people he would fight while making friends along the way. I was very, very wrong. Berserk technically follows a similar story structure to many shonen anime. Guts gradually becomes more powerful, earns titles for himself, gains companions, and even falls in love. But the dark reality of a world filled with evil hits us in the most brutal way imaginable. Hunter, you haven't seen Berserk. I can't stress enough how absolutely soul-crushing the ending to the 97 Berserk is. It's arguably the most tragic scene in all of anime. Because it ended short. It didn't get fully adapted. It takes the role of a war-torn hero and tears away the small amount of humanity remaining in Guts by dragging him to the darkest, most devastating experience possible.
But
Imagine.
the original argument was that if shonen is dying, then these are the techniques to revive the series.
Correct.
So if this demythologization happened in 97, where does that leave us now?
None of these ways, or maybe we can argue at the end, maybe there is one way.
I mean, I don't think that shonen is dying anyway. I mean, obviously the numbers will change it, but after seeing things like Boku no Hero doing so well and Kill la Kill, which I still consider to be
Sure.
a shonen, although the chat only agrees that it has shonen elements. I don't think it's really going anywhere. It's kind of one of the reasons you get into anime is you found a shonen to watch.
Right, that's very true. But you have to understand you're coming at this from a perspective of someone who is a little spoiled in the sense that you watch sort of the best of the best. You don't watch literally everything because there are probably
I'm a total casual.
3 to 5 shonens per season that you just aren't aware of, and they're very, very painfully generic. And it takes a lot to surpass that. But let's move on to the very last element, which is the reaffirmation of myth. So like demythologization, it subverts the genre, reaffirming it not as real, but as something we need to believe. So rather than having this dark, desolate outcome, the story will enter back into a positive light. I can only speak for the anime, not the manga, but I'd say Hunter x Hunter thoroughly represents the reaffirmation of myth. If it weren't for One Piece, Hunter x Hunter would be the epitome of shonen. Several, if not all, story arcs, especially
Disagree,
the Chimera
it's
Ant
Dragon Ball
arc.
Z.
No, you're wrong. So
It's Dragon Ball
especially
Z.
especially the Chimera Ant arc begin so lighthearted, then take us on this unexpectedly tragic journey, and finally accept and live with the consequences of those tragic experiences. Hunter x Hunter is a very important anime that I don't think I can fully articulate my thoughts on in context to this topic. But another example of reaffirmation is FMA, which you may want to talk about. But Dragon Ball Z, honestly, what? No.
Yeah, Dragon Ball Z is like whenever I think
have you
of
seen Hunter x Hunter?
I've not seen Hunter x Hunter.
You cannot compare Hunter x Hunter to DBZ.
But DBZ, well, you haven't even seen DBZ.
I haven't, but I
so
know.
how
you,
is this even an argument
you
anymore?
can't compare. I know you. I just know.
You just know that. What kind of argument is that? The thing is, whenever I think of shonen, the big there's a lot of generic things that'll happen. That are like you know what's gonna happen, right? Like there's some sort of big baddie, and then there's you have to have the main hero have to fight for some reason one-on-one with this dude or in some sort of epic battle, but then something happens and they're about to lose and there's some sort of giant power-up and then they win in some spectacular way. This happens over and over. This is literally the plot of Dragon Ball Z.
Right.
Is people
Right.
about to lose and pulling something out of their ass and like winning the fight.
Okay, that's the thing though. You're saying pulling something out of their ass. And I get, based on my explanation, how you would come to that conclusion.
Well, no,
this
that's literally what I think of as shonen. That's my definition. It's
Right,
like
I
that's
think-
something that needs to happen.
to a certain extent. I feel like Dragon Ball Z is sort of the stereotypical shonen, and Hunter x Hunter is what takes elements from Dragon Ball Z and turns them into the reaffirmation of myth.
Well, you realize this argument was moot the second we admitted that we haven't seen each other's
Right, so
show.
like we're not going to come to any profound conclusions, but I'm just saying speculation from knowing that DBZ is considered like the epitome of shonen to a certain extent, you know, although it's to a certain age group. Hunter x Hunter is what really takes those pulling something out of your ass moments and makes them profound, makes them have consequence and meaning.
Yeah, but sometimes I don't want meeting. I just want him
I'm
to
not-
go Super Saiyan 15.
It's fine.
This
That's fine.
time.
You can want that. You can want that and you can enjoy it. But I'm just saying that's your typical shonen. Whereas something like FMA, where you like maybe you want to talk about FMA as reaffirmation of myth
Hey,
because
hang on, real quick, this is a drink. I don't care. This is a drink. Also, Saber wins again.
Saber never wins.
She always wins. FMA, that one I think has a lot of like, there is no big pulling something out of their ass moment in that show. I don't think there is. I think everything is kind of like established at the very beginning, and that's what I love about the show is that from the very beginning to the very end, like, you know, there's no power-ups that Ed or his brother get. There's no, like, he doesn't get...
I think there might be, but go on.
I don't think, like, not legitimate power-ups. Like, he might fight with somebody and, like, learn from fighting, but it's not like now I've gone beyond metal alchemy. Now I can do other alchemy too. Like, oh, surprise, surprise, right? There's no, like, really, really big power-ups. And that's what I really respect about that show. DBZ, it's just like, you know what? Super Saiyan 5. It's just...
Right.
And that's what I love about it. I mean, okay, there's no Super Saiyan 5, just to make sure that people aren't, like, grilling me here. But they're literally Super Saiyan 4. Like, they just added numbers to the end. It's like, what's power up is this one? 3? No, we already used 3. We can't use 3. 4. We already used 4. All right, Fusion 4. Well, it just continues. It's great, dude.
Oh, gosh. Well, what does this mean for the future of shonen? These 4 forms are guidelines for subverting an exhausted genre, but is there one approach more suited for reinvigorating shonen for the modern era? I think seeing the popularity of Boku no Hero is a clear answer. Modernizing a genre, taking a classic concept with expected ideals and manipulating it in a way that emits originality while maintaining the qualities we love about it is not an easy feat. But it's happening. We are in the midst of a transitional period. I don't know what is in store for shonen. The 6 new Shonen Jump titles alongside the popularity of Boku no Hero will determine that. So I think we're going to see more anime, you know, similar to Boku no Hero, but they're going to be much more harder to emulate, you know, that feeling of the classicness with the new.
But maybe people that are getting into shonen now don't care about classicness. Like, what if if shonen means young boy and it's meant for people that are young, then, you know, there are people alive that are watching shonen that were born in the new millennium. They were born after 2000. If you make a shonen specifically for this, like, then
I think the quality will prevail. You know, I think something like Boku no Hero will really stand out compared to other things, whether someone will recognize it or not. So I feel like
if Boku no Hero does well, you know there's going to be a bunch of copycats, and then it's going to reinvigorate. I mean, that single show, by doing so well, just like what Haruhi did to the slice of life.
Yep.
That single show doing super well will kind of reinvigorate the genre on its own. I don't think it's going anywhere. And especially with the new blood coming in, no, like just like me, there's some of these people that are like actually 14 or 15 are not going to go back and watch all these shonen that have already come out. So what are they going to compare it to?
Yeah, I mean, it's a different era. We don't know. It's up for them to decide.
It's going to be fine. There's no way that shonen's going to go down. But I do agree that Boku no Hero has breathed new life into it so that people know, oh, shonen is still able to do something new and original, and they're going to see that. And then other studios are going to see that and want to make their own.
All right, so this week's question, let's move on to questions. This week's question comes from Pedal Dance. And Pedal Dance asks, how do you feel about Yuri? Sakura Trick was the bomb. So
Okay, so Yuri, are you just saying, like, literally just the definition, like, girl on girl? Like,
yeah, that's what Yuri is.
so, what is, I cannot remember. I think it's like Yuri Yuri. Is that literally the name of the show? It's a show that I tried to watch, and I couldn't watch it like episode to episode, but I really love all the GIFs that come from it. Like, I think they're really funny and they're really cool. And every time I see it, I'm like, I should give that another shot. Like, I think that it's really funny, but I don't think that the reason it's funny is because it's Yuri. I think it's because it's just like a comedy show, just like Nichijou. Like, Nichijou is kind of like Yuri in the sense that it's all girl characters, but like it's not, it has nothing to do with that. That's not the point.
Yuri, the title of Yuri is a little deceiving. There are Yuri elements to Yuri, but it's much more of just a slice of life comedy than a Yuri show like Sakura Trick is. So if I ever come up with a unique outlook on Yuri, we'll be sure to do an episode on Yuri itself. But for now, my overall opinion, I think there are two types of Yuri. Yuri for the sake of fan service, and Yuri not entirely for the sake of fan service.
Well, the fan service I totally understand, because like, I mean, that's the guy dream, quote unquote, right? Is for like two chicks at the same time, man.
Totally.
So having girl on girl, type scenes for fan service makes a whole lot of sense. But actually, like, because it's something that, like, as a male, I could never even think about what this experience feels like. I think that seeing sort of like Yuri type shows and see how the interactions between the characters go could be really interesting if they made it not so pandering.
Definitely, and that's why I think there are two types.
This is like one of the only things I might agree with you on is watching it not as like, fan service.
Totally. I don't consider myself to be a diehard Yuri fan, but I thoroughly enjoy both forms of Yuri. Fan service Yuri is pretty obvious. There are anime like Sakura Trick, as you mentioned, and Valkyrie Drive, Mermaid, which are all about watching girls kiss each other.
I mean, that's good and all, but...
Yeah, totally. But on the other hand, we have anime like Madoka and Utena that use Yuri in a much more meaningful way. What I don't like is Yuri bait. So now when I say that term, I'm not using it in the context that most people are familiar with. I don't like when an anime depicts girls as gay through subtle subtext, only to result in a vague conclusion, almost as if the writer was afraid to either follow through or was afraid that they would be, neglecting their male audience. Like, does that make sense? So when males watch anything, we envision ourselves getting with the girl, be she fictional or not. But if she's gay, then she wouldn't be interested in us. Like, I feel like this is what happened with Hibike Euphonium, basically, but you haven't seen that.
That's the K-On with tubas, right?
That is Tuba K-On, correct.
Tuba K-On. Well, I think it's kind of an interesting thing. It's like, it's kind of like a paradox, right? It's like guys think that girls kissing girls is really hot because they want to get into it, but the girls like each other, not you. So it's like it's this weird,
especially considering the fact that anime is a highly oriented towards males. So it's like, do you want to go that deep to present something meaningful, or do you want to just pander to your male
Well,
audience.
as like from a company, from a business perspective, of course it makes sense just to pander. Make a couple like, steamy scenes with the girls kissing or whatever. But as far as to make something meaningful, that's a lot more like, ballsy, because you can make something that's like truly original and a truly good story that like, breaks new ground where people haven't, treaded before, but you risk not getting any audience and like, going bankrupt or something because nobody buys your DVDs.
Yeah.
But I would like to see it. I legitimately would love to see something that was like Yuri focused, but not pandering, not about them making out all the time, but actually about just like the relationship and how that, changes their day-to-day lives. Like you said, there was a couple, I don't know if it was last season or the 2 seasons, it was like lesbian scuba divers or something, and it sounded kind of like what I'm talking about. Is that true, or was that more of a pandering show?
No. I think that's very true.
Yeah, so that's something I might check out because it sounds really interesting from like a just being a different type of story context.
Definitely. So, yeah, we will, potentially get into this topic like maybe in a full episode if I can come to some insightful angle towards Yuri. So, let's move on to what we're watching.
Well, the only 2 anime series that I'm truly keeping up with that are currently airing are Boku no Hero and Shingeki. As far as other series that I'm trying to kind of watch retroactively.
Right, and I mean, just to reiterate, we can't talk about either Boku no Hero or Attack on Titan because we talked about them last week and we recorded later last week.
Yeah, we recorded on a Saturday last week, so we were able to talk about 2 episodes at once. So the newest episodes of Boku no Hero and Shingeki at the time of recording are not out.
Correct.
They will be out tomorrow, which I will watch them then, and then have things to talk about, but can't talk about it now.
For now.
My girlfriend and I have been watching Mushishi because it was on like YouTube for free. Like Funimation apparently has a YouTube channel that they have some sub stuff for free.
What did she call it?
Mumushi or Mumushi.
I love it.
Yeah, or I don't know. It was always something different. But anyway, it was it's something that I really enjoy, but it's also like it's a weird combination of extraordinarily calming and horribly weird at the same time.
Totally. I'm glad you get that vibe.
Like so you see there was an episode about a girl that was made blind by the mushi, and then seeing kind of like her closing the second eyelid vibe and seeing the like river of mushi under her, like there was something super calming about seeing all these little green squiggles float down like an eternal river into like blinding light. But then you have like horribly like disturbing scene where like she opens her eyes and they're flood empty out of her.
Yeah.
So it's this super strange combination of very, very relaxing and a bunch of strange elements, but I love every single episode. But it's great. Everything's super unique feeling, and I think that the topic that they decided to describe and the looseness they kind of gave to the definition of mushi allows them to do a lot of really neat things with the series. So I'm really enjoying it, and I can't wait to see what comes next.
Very cool. I finally caught up with Little Witch Academia. I've been very behind on it, but I finally caught up. And the latest episode had its first big reveal. It took 22 episodes to get there, but something finally happened. So big spoilers. We found out there is a reason behind why Akko can't use magic. I feel like the final outcome of everything is seemingly predictable, but hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully there are some more surprises for the remaining episodes.
Well, why do you want to be wrong? Like, what's wrong with, if your prediction comes true, does that undermine the series?
It doesn't, but up until now, everything has felt very played out, very, simple and straightforward, and there's nothing wrong with that. And as I'll say, like, it's a good series. Like the episode was handled really well. I just wanted the series to get to this point sooner. As I've said before, I wouldn't have felt this way if like this was an original anime. It's because I already know the characters so well after 2 movies that everything up until now has felt redundant. But it is a perfectly good anime.
It
I
almost
really
seems
enjoy
like
it.
the opposite. Like, so Gurren Lagann and Madoka have both done this. They had their full anime runs, and then they created movies that were condensed versions of the anime.
Mm-hmm.
This series seems to have almost done this in reverse.
It has.
They created 2 condensed movies and then an anime to extend it out. So I think that's why you're getting this feeling of everything is so drawn out. Like, you know what's going to happen, so there's no suspense, there's no surprise. You wish it would just get on with it into
Yeah.
new territory.
I had this idea way back before it started that, you know, the anime would pick up where the movies left off, essentially, and rather than that, they just started from the beginning, which I didn't like. But that's just a personal preference. If you're going into Little Witch completely blind, you know, like you haven't seen the movies, it's a really enjoyable, like almost like a iconic series in a sense. It has like all the elements you really need to establish characters extremely well, and they're very personable, and it's very episodic in a good way. But I don't. That's not what I wanted from that series. So hopefully there are more twists and turns with whatever's remaining, but we'll see. So that's pretty much the biggest thing this week. Shingeki no Bahamut had a pretty tragic background for Joan of Arc. That episode was very emotional. Yeah, just surprisingly, for the tone of that episode was much darker than anything up until now. Psychono was really, really good. Surprisingly powerful episode about pushing creatives to really, expand on their artistic abilities, and kind of they kind of betrayed the main character in sort of a admirable but unexpected way. And Psychono is so like so unexpectedly good this season. And then Sekai Surukado, it's managed to keep me thoroughly entertained and curious throughout the entire series based on its initial concept of how humanity acts when presented with certain information. Now, we've learned what these alien beings are to a certain extent, and while I thought that was fascinating enough, we got another completely unexpected twist that makes me think Sekai Surukado is the best original anime of this season so far. It, like, blew me away. If you're not watching Sekai Surukado and you can tolerate CG, the CG is not bad by any means. It is absolutely amazing. Like the pace, it had, if I had to make a complaint, it had minor pacing issues in the beginning, but it is so fascinating. And like, I couldn't predict what happened in this latest episode, like by any means. And just solely based on what happened on this latest episode, that's what made me say, I think this is the best original anime, non-sequel that came out. It was just phenomenal. If you have any questions or suggestions for episode topics, please don't hesitate to send as many as you like. You can send them to myself at Secret Otaku on Tumblr, email us at theweeabooze@gmail.com, or just leave a comment wherever you're listening. Join us on Twitch most Fridays when we record live, and join us on our Discord so you can talk to us whenever you'd like. Also, consider supporting us on Patreon or leaving an iTunes review if you like what we do. And more than anything, please share the podcast, because word of mouth is pretty much the only way we get new listeners. We want to thank Hentai for our intro music and Kuwagata for our outro music. And like always, get
Drunk
and
anime.
see you guys next week.
Peace.
You can catch me smoking a sour off the coast of Okinawa. Feeling so high like I'm Ho-Oh in that tower. Take a flight on some shit. Got my dogs riding beside me, blazing hot. That's kamikaze, sacred fire. Don't be mad, I'm lit. Catch me smoking a sour off the coast of Okinawa. feeling so high, like I'm Hobo in that tower, take a flight on some shit. Got my dogs riding beside me, blazing hot, that's kamikaze, sacred fire, don't be mad, I'm lit.
How do you like Rim?
Because there's a reason to like her, you know? Like, she's in the series and she does stuff that contributes to the plot, whereas Amelia just exists.
And Amelia is hot as fuck.
Not
and she's
really.
like magic and kills shit.
I don't remember
And she has
that.
a cute cat friend.